Night has fallen over the Atlantic Ocean, and an armada of more than 100 U.S. military transport planes is flying in tight formation. Inside, thousands of paratroopers from the 82nd Airborne Division are fully rigged and ready to jump. But midway to their target, a transmission comes through. The order is given to abort. The entire fleet banks hard, turns around midair, and heads back to base. Once a military machine of this size is airborne and the invasion order is given, stopping it is almost physically impossible. So what could possibly halt an operation of this magnitude at the very last second? This mid-air turnaround stood as the climax of a highly calculated diplomatic strike, executed with literal minutes left on the clock. 3 years earlier, in 1991, Haiti's first freely elected government was overthrown in a military coup. The man who seized control was General Raoul Cedras. Under his junta, the country rapidly destabilized. Facing political violence and economic collapse, tens of thousands of Haitians fled the island by boat, risking their lives in the open ocean to reach the United States. The international community tried to intervene. The Organization of American States imposed heavy economic sanctions. The United Nations brokered a negotiated agreement for Cedras to step down. He ignored all of it. This flowchart tracks the global response. When embargoes and treaties failed to remove the junta, the United Nations Security Council passed Resolution 940. This authorized member states to use all necessary means to restore Haiti's elected government. When diplomatic leverage runs dry and economic penalties are absorbed, the only remaining tool is the credible threat of overwhelming physical force. By September 1994, the United States had amassed 25,000 troops, deployed 2 aircraft carriers, and prepped the 82nd Airborne Division for an immediate combat drop. While the military readied the invasion, President Bill Clinton deployed a final diplomatic delegation to Port-au-Prince, led by former President Jimmy Carter, Senator Sam Nunn, and retired General Colin Powell. General Powell secured an audience with Cedras by leveraging a relationship that stretched back years, to when Cedras was an international student and Powell was a rising officer. This past connection provided the opening the delegation needed to enter the negotiation room. Inside the negotiation room, talks dragged on for 2 weeks and eventually stalled. Cedras believed the Americans would not actually invade his country, assuming the troop buildup was merely a political posture. You can park an armada off a nation's coastline, but if the target thinks you won't pull the trigger, the threat holds zero coercive power. Knowing they had to break the dictator's confidence, the U.S. delegation brought a video monitor into the room and pressed play. On screen, paratroopers from the 82nd Airborne Division were actively gearing up and boarding transport planes at Fort Bragg. Cedras watched what he assumed was a live feed of the American military preparing to launch. Then, the delegation informed him that the footage wasn't live. It had been recorded over 2 hours ago. The men on the screen were already in the air, flying across the Atlantic, and would be over Port-au-Prince before sunrise. Realizing the invasion was already underway, Cedras accepted the terms to step down. Word was instantly relayed to the Pentagon, and the planes were turned around mid-flight. By withholding the exact timeline until the planes were already airborne, the delegation stripped Cedras of his ability to call their bluff, forcing a surrender without a single shot being fired. Instead of a nighttime combat drop under heavy fire, U.S. forces touched down peacefully in Port-au-Prince the next morning. They arrived as peacekeepers, walking the streets in broad daylight, but the diplomatic agreement created a deeply uncomfortable reality on the ground. Because Cedras had surrendered conditionally, the Haitian military was not disbanded. The U.S. forces now had to patrol the capital alongside the very soldiers they had been sent to fight. This led to immediate friction. Bound by highly restrictive rules of engagement, U.S. Marines were initially forced to stand by and watch as the junta's police forces violently broke up crowds of Haitian civilians celebrating the American arrival. Following public outrage, the U.S. military quickly adjusted its strategy. Commanders sent a direct message to the Haitian police chief, making it clear that if the assaults on civilians didn't stop, the U.S. military would hold him personally accountable. Avoiding a full-scale war often requires navigating a morally compromised environment, where occupying forces must temporarily manage an existing power structure to prevent total anarchy. By October 1994, Jean-Bertrand Aristide returned to Haiti and resumed office. The military junta was gone, and the U.S. forces eventually handed control over to a United Nations peacekeeping mission. Throughout the primary operation, the United States suffered only a single combat casualty. Compare that to the hundreds or thousands of lives that would have been lost in a contested, forced entry invasion of the island. Operation Uphold Democracy illustrates a difficult truth about statecraft. When diplomatic pressure fails, the most effective way to secure a peaceful outcome is to demonstrate an absolute, unblinking willingness to go to war.